if you don't mind.
Okay, Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. If someone can chat with brother Abdullah Dambaba to tell him to enable his audio so that he can be with us, inshallah. The last time,
maybe he's using the earpod, Sheikh.
even though if it is not showing here, he cannot hear us. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
If it doesn't show us mic, he cannot hear us. And now we were on page. Sorry, yes, we're page
117, Sheikh. 117, yes. I'll read from the last paragraph.
Okay, read.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Application of a general law on an individual will not negate its generality. Application of a general law on an individual will not negate its generality. If a general statement is mentioned with a law, then the same law is mentioned on some individuals. The law still remains general, contrary to Abu Dharr's opinion. This is the case whether they are mentioned together, like in Tanazzalul Malaikatu war-ruhu fiha. It translates, therein come down the angels and the spirit, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. Or whether they are separate, like the hadith from Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, إِذَا ذُبِغَ الْإِهَابُ فَقَدْ طَهُرَ. When the skin is tanned, it is purified. Along with the hadith related by Muslim that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed by a dead goat belonging to Maimuna radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he said, إِلَّا انْتَفَعَتُمْ بِإِهَابِهَا. Why did they not get its skin? They had better tan it and make use of it. Similarly, the hadith by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a man finds his property with a poverty-stricken man, he has more right to take them back than anyone else, along with the hadith. If a man finds his very things with a bankrupt, he has more right to take them back than anyone else. Another example is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the verdict of preemption for everything. The other hadith is, if the boundaries of the property were demarcated or the ways and the streets were fixed, then there was no preemption. The implication or meaning of applying a general law to some individuals of the species is, as is said, a negation of the possibility of excluding those individuals from the species. Amongst the scholars of Usool, a rhythmic sentence about this ascribed to Imam Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, has become famous. It reads, leaving off an explanation in relating a situation, and there is ambiguity, it takes the place of generality in speech, and it is well enough to use as proof. An example of this is what the Prophet ﷺ said to Ghilan al-Thaqafi, who accepted Islam and had 10 wives. Retain any 4 out of them. He did not ask him if he married them all at once or separately. This is a proof that there is no difference between the two situations. You would like to explain, Sheikh?
Yes, inshallah. Again, this is, with regard to the generalities in the Sharia. When there is a general sentence or a general command, what we call am, nobody can, can make it specific to anything. It means all, even that command was specifically said about one particular thing, then it takes a generality. As we mentioned in the previous class, when the man who did some sins, he committed some sins and he came and he made salah with the Prophet ﷺ, and he told him about these sins, and the Prophet ﷺ told him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed an ayah, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, that the good deeds, delete or erase or take off or expiate for bad deeds. So this person, so the ayah is general in a sense, but the Prophet ﷺ, when he quoted him this ayah, he said, is this something for me alone? He said, no, it is rather for the whole ummah. And Umar, we mentioned that he was angry, and he said, how could this person think that it is only for him, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it general. So the implication of a general law, even if it was revealed because of an individual person or individual instance or an individual event, it will take, it will assume its generality, and it will be applicable to all general cases. And he mentioned here, some ayat, for example, he said, تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها. Okay, he said, then come down the angels and the spirit, Jibreel, whether they are separate, like in the hadith. So تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها. So the malaika is a general, and الروح means Jibreel, which is included in al-malaika, but it made it specific, to الروح, to give it more, to give this night more honor. But al-malaika means all angels. We cannot exempt any angel from that. He said here, or whether they are separate, like the hadith from Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, إذا دبغ الإهاب فقد طهر. When the skin is tanned, it is purified. So when the skin is tanned, it is purified. This hadith was this. If you look at the hadith, aside from the incident upon what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, you will find it that it's very general. So any skin that's tanned will be purified, whether that skin is from edible animals, from a dead animal, from vigorous animals, from whatever. Okay. So he mentioned here that the hadith, this hadith is general, and there is another hadith when the Prophet ﷺ came across a dead goat, and this dead goat, the goat actually was belonging to al-Mu'mineen Maymuna, may Allah be pleased with her, and he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, ألا انتفعتم, ألا, the word here, إلا, it's a typo. Actually, ألا is should you, or why you don't you get used if it's a skin. ألا انتفعتم بإهابها. They, so they had better tan it and make use of it. This is the meaning of it, okay? And the meaning, ألا انتفعتم بإهابها, means with after tanning. Because if a person thinks that they can use its skin without tanning, then it's a problem, because there is a hadith, and this hadith is general, and even if this is specific to this case, this means you cannot get use of the skin without or before tanning. I hope inshallah it's clear. When the Prophet ﷺ said, shouldn't you get use of its skin, means after tanning. So it's not mentioned here, because the general rule applies also. Nobody should say this is, special to this case, and they can use the skin without tanning. Okay. He said, similarly, the hadith by Abu Huraira, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, من وجد ماله عند رجل مفلس فهو أحق به. if a man finds his property with a poverty-stricken man, a person who was bankrupt, or he was rich and suddenly he lost his money, then he has more right to take that money back. He said this hadith goes along with the other hadith, which is من أدرك ماله بعينه عند رجل أو إنسان قد أفلس فهو أحق به من غيره. يعني now here من وجد ماله, if a man finds his money, his property with a broke person who was stricken by poverty after being rich, then he has more right to take them back than anyone else, okay, because that property belongs to him. So, and he said if a man finds his very things with a bankrupt, he has more right to take them back than anyone else. So there is no definition of the wealth here or the property, and there is no definition of person. Yani, this is a general rule. It applies to anyone. Now, if a person was bankrupt and as the early eras, they used to give, in lieu of money, for example, sheep, but now, for example, it's money, and nobody can signify or know his money. This goes to the judge, to arbitrate or to see who has more right of such wealth. He said another example is the verdict of preemption, shuf'a, for everything. Okay, there is a hadith that there is shuf'a, means he said preemption here. I don't know whether preemption is clear to you or not, but shuf'a means he has more right than others in that thing. For example, if two neighbors, they are adjacent to each other and the boundaries are not clear, there is no streets between them, then everyone, if one of them wants to sell his land, the shuf'a, the preemption or the priority is for his neighbor. He cannot sell such such land unless he consult with his neighbor, because it's not yet defined the boundaries between them. Okay, but if the boundaries are defined, are lined up, and the streets were fixed, then there is no shuf'a, there is no preemption. He said here the generality, the implication or meaning of applying a general law to same individuals of the species is, as I said, a negation of the possibility of excluding those individuals from the species. When there is a general statement, nobody can get out of it in any case. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. This is a general, so it includes both all males and females Muslims. So nobody can exempt anything of that unless there is an evidence to show otherwise. Okay. He said here, Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he mentioned a rule stated in his book, okay, in his Usool, and he was actually the teacher of Usool and the first one to write an Usool. He said, leaving off an explanation in relating a situation and clarifying or make the sorry for that, yeah, leaving off an explanation in relating to a situation, and there is ambiguity, then it takes the place of generality in a speech, and it is well enough to be used as a proof. So a person, it cannot be, for example, if the Prophet ﷺ says something and made it general, nobody can, can. And for example, as we said, إذا دبغ الإهاب فقد طهر. When the skin, or when a skin is tanned, then it becomes pure and it can be used. What's ambiguous here? Okay, the ambiguous is what kind of skin? Is it for the edible animals or for something else? No, if we apply this rule, as Imam Shafi'i said here, then it becomes, every, animal, whatever that animal is, okay? With the exception to the pigs and the dogs, because these are impure and it cannot be at all become pure, okay? He said here, an example of this rule is what the Prophet ﷺ said to Ghailan al-Thaqafi when he accepted Islam, that he had 10 women, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, retain 4 of them. خذ منهن 4. So he gave him the choice to take any 4. He didn't say, and he didn't ﷺ specify which 4. You should retain those with kids, or those firstly married, or those lately married, or those who have special situations. No, rather the Prophet ﷺ said, choose and retain, 4 of them, any 4, okay, out of them. So this is the point about the generalities in the Sharia. Now we come to the specific, al-khas. If you don't mind, you can read, inshallah. I hope, inshallah, the general now is very clear. Inshallah, when al-khas we talk about it more, inshallah, it will be clearer. But if you have questions with regard to al-am, with regard to the general, you can, inshallah, raise your hand, or we'll just leave it at the end of the class. Go ahead, you can read, Sheikh Abdul Majid.
May I ask a question before going, Sheikh?
Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned about the, the lost property. Even if it is in the hands of Muflis, he has picked it up, it goes back to the original owner. Is that the understanding of that hadith, Sheikh?
Yeah, it's not lost. More, usually the people in their dealings, in their transactions, they used to deal with articles. So if this person became bankrupt, now people will request their money back or their properties back, okay? So we will look, if this man is still, in his possession, the properties of some of those people who requested them back, then they have more right over others to take their properties. You get the point? And for example, say Zaid. Zaid was a rich person, and we were dealing with him. I gave him camels, okay? I gave him a she camel, okay, red one, okay? And suddenly, I heard that he, went bankrupt. So if I, proceed to the claim my property out of him, and the judge seen that this person still has my red she camel, then I have more right than others, okay? With the point, if a lot of people are asking this bankrupt person money or wealth, the judge will not say, okay, we will sell this she camel and then we'll distribute amongst the amongst you, because you are debtors, the money. No, rather I would say, this is my she camel, and he will give it to me. Okay, even if those others will not have any money returned back to them or any property. Clear?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, Jazakallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Al
Now,
khas, the
yes, of course.
specific.
تفضل.
Al khas, the specifics. Its definition, al khas, is the opposite of am, general. An am absorbs more than one without any limit. Al khas does not absorb except one, like Zaid, or more than one, but on the basis of limitation like 2, 5, or 100, because they are limited with the numbers. Also the indefinite in a positive statement like I saw a man in the house, or free a slave. Although it is suitable for every man or every slave, it is actually specifying one individual alone, meaning I saw one man and free one slave. At-takhsis, the specification. Its definition. Linguistically, it means to isolate, to separate. Technically, it means limitation of the general statement to some individuals with evidence to indicate it. In other words, it is making the fixed law for the general limited to some individual by exempting others from it. The takhsis can also be limitation of numerous amounts to some individuals alone. Examples of these are A. Limiting the general like Allah's words in the Quran. Yusikumullahu fi awladikum. Allah directs you as regards your children. This is general for all unto whom Allah is addressing, and general for all children. This is specified by the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We prophets do not have anything for bequeathal, inheritance, thus exempting children of the prophets from generality of children of those who are addressed. Also in a hadith reported by Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhuma, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, a Muslim does not inherit from an unbeliever. This specifies the generality of all children by excluding an unbelieving child. B. An example of limiting a numerous amount, for example, 2 minus 3, you say, he has 10 dinars, gold coin for me, save 3. The debt, therefore, is limited to 7 alone. Two principles result from this. 1. General or numerous of which some are exempted. This is called the general, which is specified as mentioned earlier. Number 2, what indicates exclusion, and it is called mukhassis, the thing that does the specification. Like the two hadiths mentioned earlier in connection with inheritance for children and the exception in the last example. You like to explain, Sheikh?
Yes, inshallah. طيب. You can go to this 76, if you don't mind. Read it on 76.
70 in the
The
176 footnote.
Yes.
Footnote 176. Surah Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 408. The complete text of the hadith is as follows. I read in Arabic, Sheikh.
طيب, let me translate. I'll translate it. Okay. This hadith was mentioned in al-Bukhari that Fatima and al-Abbas, may Allah be pleased with them, they came to Abu Bakr requesting their inheritance from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it actually includes the land called Fadak and their share in Khaybar. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anh told them that I heard the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, "La nurath," we cannot be inherited. Whatever we leave would be sadaqah. And the the household of Muhammad, means his family, eats from this wealth, means from the monetary house. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, by Allah, I will not leave an order the Prophet ﷺ, whatever he used to do, I would do. Okay. So subhanallah, Fatima, Allah pleased with her, became angry at him, and she didn't speak to him till he did. She died, radiallahu anha. And this is what the Shia usually wage against Abu Bakr and against the Sahaba. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from the deviation. But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was stick to this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba approved of what he said. Okay, if this hadith was not mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it would have been known that the inheritance would be given to them. Okay, and this is specifically and peculiarly and speciality to the prophets. All prophets cannot be inherited in this world, worldly inheritance, and Allah knows best. This is to free them from any it might be looked at as they are hoarding or saving for their for their own selves and their families. He mentioned her before taqsis, okay, as the khas, and he defined al khas as opposite to al am. So al am includes and encompasses more than one without any limit. Okay, in Allah saying يوصيكم الله في أولادكم, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bequests you in all of your progeny, all of your offspring. Okay, so يوصيكم, this is to all the ummah, including the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, including the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, we came to know that there is takhsis on it, as general. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, some, and he gave some details on inheritance, you will find that there is no inheritance for the forefathers if the children are there. Okay, that's why it's specified in the ayat. Okay, as if we go into details of that, or he who has studied Fara'id, he knows what we are talking about. He said al-khas does not include, okay, does not absorb except one or more, but it's limited number. So for example, if you say Zaid, it would be known that there is Zaid is one man, especially if he's known to the people. Okay, but if there is more than Zaid, then it would be a general Zaid ibn Ali or Zaid ibn Haritha or Zaid, if you are talking about the Sahaba. But if you are talking about some specific one, then it becomes khas to this person. But again, Zaid is limited. If you say Zaid, there are numbers. You cannot say Zaid, all the human beings means Zaid. Okay, and it comes to my mind, always, ضرب زيد عمرا. In teaching, in teaching Arabic, they always use the word Zaid to mean someone named Zaid, but they didn't specify any Zaid or which Zaid, and they use this ضرب زيد عمرا. And there was a good poor guy who did not like such situation. He said when he started learning Arabic, it was said to him ضرب زيد عمرا. He said, Astaghfirullah, why Zayd should, beat Amr. He started to pick up on the situation. They said it's not, this is just an example. Zayd never beated Amr. He said, A'udhu Billah. You are teaching us to lie from the beginning, and he left studying the grammar. Allah musta'an. But this is, again, it is usually used in a general sense. But now, the people of language, they use this as an example. They didn't mean, specific Zayd, beating someone who's Amr. So they, they say why Zayd beated Amr. They said because Amr, when you write Amr, it has waw. And they said because Amr, stole the waw from Dawood. Because Dawood, we are writing it with one waw. And they just falsify it like this without any, just, for matter of joke, Allah understand. Like now he say if it was said by someone, I saw a man in his house, if he's in, he said, I saw a man in my house. So this man is, though the word man is a general, but it's known that it is khas. No doubt he saw someone who's a man, male, not woman, and specific one. So it cannot be said he saw a man means he saw 1,000, men, right? One single man, unknown, specific. And if a person said, I freed, a slave, then it is known that he freed one slave only. Now, when we come to takhsis, is like, he said linguistically, the takhsis, unfortunately, these are terminology, and he said specification. Specification, I would doubt that it carries the same meaning, because as said here, linguistically, it means to isolate, to separate, and technically, it means limitation of the general statement to some individuals with evidence with evidence, proving that. So this is takhsis, in other words, it is making the fixed law for the general limited to some individuals by exempting others from it. So this is takhsis. Takhsis could mean limitation, okay, or restriction. I would rather use maybe restriction or limitation, okay, better than specification, and Allah knows best. So he said the takhsis can also be limitation of numerous, okay, amounts to some individuals alone, okay. Example of this are limiting the general, like the general, يوصيكم الله في أولادكم, is a general, bequest from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the general order. And he said this general for all unto whom Allah is addressing, okay, and general for all, offsprings, because أولادكم, the children or the offspring. This is specified by the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, means it has been limited or restricted, by the Prophet ﷺ to mean all of the Muslims and believers except for prophets, or except for him ﷺ in this ummah. So he said, لا نورث. We prophets do not, leave anything or do not have anything for inheritance. Okay. Thus exempting the, the offspring of the Prophet ﷺ from the generality of the children of those who are addressed, and exempting himself from the addressing, the addressing is general, okay, in that sense. He said also in the hadith reported by Usama ibn Zayd, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا الكافر المسلم. So, يوصيكم الله في أولادكم. A person might be a believer and he has a son who is not, was a disbeliever. Now, this, limits and restricts, that, wasiyya, that bequest or that order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the heirs. So a kafir cannot inherit from a Muslim, neither nor a Muslim from a kafir. Okay. Now it moves to the mind. So what happens if a new Muslims embrace Islam, and when he goes to his country, in case he might get some inheritance from his father, should he take it or should he reject it or not? There are fatwas from ulama that he takes it, but not as inheritance, and he gets use of it, if he's in need of it. And if he's not in need of it, it's better to give it to the Muslims, beneficiary organization or non-profit organizations. He said this restricts the generality of all children by excluding an unbelieving child. He said an example also of limiting a numerous amount, for example, 2 minus 3, you say he has 10 dinars, gold coins for me, save 3. And this is also limiting and takhsis. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he said, فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا 50 عام. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that Noah alayhi salam, he has stayed doing da'wah 1,000 years, less 50. So if it was mentioned 1,000 years only, we would believe it would be around that, more, okay, within that range, or 1,000, okay. But when he said, less 50 years, we come to realize that it was exactly 950 years. He said here the depth therefore is limited to 7 alone. 2 principal results from this: general or numerous, of which some are exempted. This is called the general, which is specified as mentioned earlier. Okay, it's a general, but it was limited, or restricted. What indicates exclusion, and it is called mukhassis. Okay, he mentioned here the thing that does the specification, or that actually would be regarded as restriction or limitation, takhsis, like the 2 hadiths mentioned earlier in connection with inheritance for children, and the exception in the last example. Now, read al-mukhassisat.
Al-Mukhassisat, what makes the specification? The specifications for general words are divided into 2 categories: Muttasil, which is adjoined, and Munfasil, separate. The first, Muttasil, what is not separated by itself, but is adjoined to its meaning by a word, so it is always attached to it. The second, Munfasil, it is what is separated by itself, and there is no connection in its quoting to the general statement, whether by words or otherwise. Al-Mukhassisat al-Muttasila, the connected specifiers. There are 5 things in this category. Number 1, al-Istithna, means exception. Second, ash-Shart, condition. Third, as-Sifa, quality. Fourth, al-Ghaya, extreme limit. Number 5, Badal al-Ba'd.
بدل نعم البعض
Badal al-Ba'd, partial substitution. At-Takhsis bil al-Istithna, specification by exception.
Let me go over it in general, because
Right.
it's a bit involved, and then inshallah we can next week go over it, because we still have only 10 minutes. He said there are 5 things in this category in تخصيص المتصل والمنفصل. المتصل joined, okay, and المنفصل is separate. So he said الاستثناء. Usually الاستثناء comes, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين, except those. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made an exception. So this is استثناء متصل. Okay, a short condition. Okay, and usually, if there is, you apply a condition on so and so. There is a general rule, and there is, for example, the ulama, they say, there is no salah after Fajr, okay, till the sun rises. Okay, like it's a general statement, but when you look at it, there is a condition here that the person, has not done Fajr. Because some people, they think that if I come after the people, they did Fajr, I will not do my Fajr till the sun rises. And this is no. Conditionally here is that you have to have done Fajr. Okay, so the time of Fajr extends up to about the sun rising. So when a person has not done his Fajr, so he's not included in the banning till he does it. Okay. As-sifa, there is a quality that says, that shows the sentence has been mentioned with a quality. Okay. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Okay, we come to realize that this is not addressing to all human beings, but it is to the believers, because sifa here made mukhassas. Okay, al-ghaya sometimes, and badal al-ba'd will come inshallah in some examples next week, but these are the mukhassisat muttasila. And if we look into here, as he mentioned here, فلبث فيهم 1000 سنة إلا 50 عاما, this is مخصص with استثناء. Okay, and he mentioned, yes, okay, he will have more details about الاستثناء. We will leave it inshallah next week, because there are some conditions that should be included in an istithna. Because some people, they said there is istithna muttasil and there is istithna munqata. Okay, as will come with us. And this is in Arabic language. We might encounter it, inshallah, and give some examples to this. I'll just stop here if you have questions, inshallah. And next week we'll go into the details, inshallah, of al-istithna and the shart and the sifa, inshallah, and al-ghaya and badal al-ba'd. It would be very nice if someone read through these pages and try to understand, or put his questions and remarks, so that we can benefit all together, because these are a bit involved, lexically, what we can say, contextual expressions. So we have to be aware of it to the best of the ability. I know it might be difficult to explain it in other than Arabic, but with the examples, inshallah, things will be clear. If you have any questions, inshallah, we'll address. If there is no questions, we'll stop here, inshallah, today.
Salaam alaikum, Sheikh. I have a question, a clarification.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh Nabil.
You explained that, that's what I understood, that after giving gift to somebody, that example of red camel, and you become bankrupt, and there are creditors asking for their money, you can go to the person to whom you have gifted some property or something, and then you can claim it back. Is that what I understand?
Nice you asked this question. No, actually, this comes when, if it is a gift, then it would have been, Muslim cannot get his gift back. But this is, at that time, in these times, early times, like, for example, maybe it would happen now if you, for example, give your car to someone as, you sell it to him, but you didn't get the money back, okay?
Okay.
You didn't get your money back, and this person became bankrupt. Now the people will start to, to raise claims to get their money from him. It's your
Okay.
right to get your car back, okay?
Okay.
Usually when a person is bankrupt, what would happen? The court will, stop him from any, sales or any, what I could say, transactions. They will
Yes.
declare him that this man is bankrupt and he cannot, all of the, all of his transactions after declaring that he's bankrupt cannot be invalid.
Correct.
And they would,
Yes.
now, when the people demand their money, usually what happens, the court will sell, sell his properties in auction. But now if
Yes.
I have money and I need my money from him, and it's due to selling him a car, then it's my right to take my car back. But if I gave him as a gift, no. خلاص, it will be gone. Yes.
Okay. So, as the original seller, you have the first right, basically. That's what we understand.
Yes. If it is it is it was
And
sold.
transaction is not complete. That's why you can claim back your original
Yes,
property.
okay. And you have more right to take it back, even if it was the only thing. Yes.
Okay.
Any more
Okay,
questions, brothers? Any more questions?
I on the same subject where Sheikh Nabi Khan asked Sheikh, for
Yes.
example, 10 people gave 10 different items to a man to keep safe custody. And the man who took the custody became bankrupt and he has sold 9 items and he left with only one item belonging to one particular person. So instead of demanding that person to sell the item he has in hand and distribute to all the 10 people, the court will say, because this is a specific item belonging to this particular gentleman, you cannot subdivide it, but you have to return in full to that particular person. It belongs,
Right.
the original owner whom it belongs. Is that understanding
Yes.
correct, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Jazakumullah khair.
Exactly. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you for your attentive listening, and inshallah next week or next class.
Sheikh Nabi, you understood the concept, Ravi?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Most welcome. اللهم امين. May Allah reward you all. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.